Yesterday, someone on my Discord channel shared this clip on the Barbarian channel and asked about this build, which looks pretty fun and fast for farming as a Barbarian. I sent him the build, but why not share it with you guys as well so you can check it out and have a different build to play when you are farming in the open world. Before we move on to the build, I think this clip is from a Reddit post, so shout out to the guy who shared it in the first place. Now let's start talking about skills and the essences you need to use with each skill. Our first skill is Leap. Thanks to this skill, we jump around like crazy and move between packs of monsters really quickly. And we are using two different essences with it to make this possible. The first one is a main hand essence called Selena's Iron. Leap causes the ground to shake where you land, dealing damage to all enemies in the area over 3 seconds. And the other one is a pants essence called Metalomine. After using Leap, your damage is increased by 19% for 4 seconds. Well, actually you can use different essences instead of this one, depending on your needs. For example, Cliff Divers gives you a 19% critical hit chance for 3 seconds after you activate Leap, but I think it's not necessary since I'm getting my critical hit chance from my Banquet set items. But you might want to use Angman's set instead of Banquet, and if you do, using Cliff Divers instead of Metalomine might be better. We are going to talk about set items in a minute, so don't worry about it. Actually, you have one more option for pants, and that one is called Flattener. Leap maximum charges increased by 1. I find this really unnecessary since this skill already has 2 stacks and a pretty fast cooldown. But you can try Flattener and decide which one works best for you. Now that's all for the Leap skill, and next we have Grab. This is the skill that makes you say that how he is moving that fast. And actually it doesn't always that fast, I'm not sure, but sometimes it doesn't give you that crazy fast animation even though I have the same movement speed all the time. It might be related to the attack speed you have when you activate the skill because as you know, attack speed increases the animation speeds as well. And to get that dash and trash animation we are using a main hand essence called the Hoover. Grab now causes you to charge forward and grab the first enemy you hit while also dealing damage to all enemies in your path. You then jump and slam the ground, dealing damage to all nearby enemies and slowing them. You are immune to loss of control and knockback effects while the skill is active. Since the skill deals damage when you are running and after you slam the grab target to the floor, it makes it possible to take out 2 packs of monsters with just one skill, which is quite fun to look at. And next we have Wraith of the Berserker with the offhand essence we always use called Sundered Legacy. I think we already know what this skill does, so I'm not going to explain it further. And finally we have Sprint, which makes us run faster, obviously. And to make it even better, we are using 2 essences with it. The first one is a helmet essence called Spirit Breaker. Sprint also leaves tornadoes in your path that deal damage to enemies they strike. And the other one is a shoulder essence we always use on farm builds, Hell's Legacy. Sprint also leaves a trail of flames, dealing damage to enemies over 4 seconds. We are using these essences to have a lot of ways to trigger our set items, plus they deal damage to the monsters, which we like to see. And finally, for the primary attack, I am using Frenzy with an offhand essence called Oncoming Brutality. Frenzy increases damage you deal to that enemy by 6% for 3 seconds, stacking up to a 30% increase. We don't really use our primary attack with this build, but when you are killing the purple and red monsters, it helps a bit. Now let's take a look at all the essences we are using while seeing all of them on the screen. For the helmet we have Spirit Breaker, for the shoulders we have Hell's Legacy. I'm using Metalomine for the pants, but like I said we have a couple of options for this one. And for the main hands we have the Hoover and Selena's Iron. For the offhands we are using Sundered Legacy and Oncoming Brutality. Maybe you realized that I didn't mention any chest essences because unfortunately we don't have any chest essences that work with this build in the game. So you can use one of the chest essences you have as a placeholder, it doesn't matter. Now let's talk about set items. Right now I'm using this build with 6 pieces of Banquet of Ice and 2 pieces of Vitu's Urge. And it works like a charm without any issues. But if you don't have these or want to use something else, you can use 4 pieces of Angman's Conflagration, 2 pieces of Vitu's Urge and 2 pieces of Banquet. Having 2 pieces of Vitu's is a must since it increases the duration of Sprint and Wraith of the Berserker. On top of that, it increases all the beneficial effects duration we get from other skills like Leap's damage increase. And 6 pieces of Banquet are just good since it gives you damage and critical hit chance increase bonuses from 2 and 4 pieces. And 6 piece activates that Poison Rage every 40 seconds, which kills monsters by itself. But like I said, using 4 pieces of Angmats is a good option as well since you are going to be able to trigger that 4 piece bonus with all the damage dealing skills we are using. And if you go with Angmats, You can use 2 pieces of Banquet to increase your damage because we are dealing continual damages all the time, so you are going to get that 15% increased damage almost all the time. I think these 2 options should be enough to make this build work really well, but you can always use 2 pieces of Windloft or Issatar instead of Banquet if you want to try it that way. Now let's talk about legendary gems you can use with this build. First of all, Void Spark is really good for open world farming, and you don't even have to rank it up. Just use it as an auxiliary gem on one of the 5-star legendary gems you don't really need for farming. For example, I'm using it on Echoing Shade, but if you can't use Void Spark, it's no big deal. It's just a good gem to have, so you don't have to buy it just to use it with this build. Other than that, gems like Pain Clasp, Viper's Bite, Everlasting Torment, Ignis Scorn, Mother's Lament, Berserker's Eye work really well with this build. You can even use the new Grim Rhythm if you have it. Obviously, Blood-Soaked Jade and Bottled Hope are like must-haves for any build, and this one is no exception. And lastly, we can talk about the Paragon tree we are using. Usually I use Treasure Hunter when I'm doing open world farm, and I recommend you to use that as well if you still need that extra dust and scrap. But if you want to move around a little bit faster, you can actually go with Ranger. You might ask why we are using Ranger as a Barbarian. Well, it's because of the Lone Wolf node that gets activated right away, which gives you a 10% increased movement speed, and this one actually works, unlike Massacre's movement speed bonus. So, with Treasure Hunter I have 60% movement speed, and with Ranger it goes up to 70%. And that's all the information I can give you about this build. If you have suggestions or questions, let me know in the comments section. Thanks for tuning in and take care.